I used to find that learning a new character was overwhelming. I didn't know what order to learn things in, and I'd keep falling into traps that were slowing me down. I've been playing a lot of new characters recently, and it's gotten a lot smoother. I've built a bit of a process now. I'm going to talk about how I learn new characters and explain the stages I go through. Starting with the early steps of building familiarity, then experimenting with their full toolkit before eventually optimizing. The first stage is all about building familiarity. At the start, you really just want to get comfortable with the core tools of the character and how they feel to play. I start by going into training mode and using all of the character's moves. I'm not really trying to memorize anything at this point, I'm just trying to make sure I'm aware of all their tools. I'll then try to figure out some basic combos, either through trials or just experimenting. Make sure they're simple combos at first. Optimization comes later. For now, you really want to get into matches as soon as possible. After that, I'll try to figure out which buttons look good, which are plus, which are punishable, and which are long ranged. Try to build out a basic plan for neutral. I'll deliberately avoid any tools that look difficult to use. I'm trying to build a very simple game plan. Then I'll bring it all together to have an idea of what buttons to press, what combos they lead to, and figure out some simple knockdown pressure. I try to get through this whole process quickly so I can get into matches as soon as possible. Usually I dive straight into ranked, but Battle Hub, casuals, even arcade is fine. Play whatever you're comfortable with. Once you get into matches, you'll quickly learn which buttons feel good and which don't. You'll probably find situations where you don't know a combo or how to continue pressure. As these situations come up, go into training mode or replay takeover and figure out what you could have done. If you're lost, you can look up combos, but don't focus on being optimal at this point. I can't stress enough that you don't need to optimize everything on the first few days of playing a character. Once you start feeling comfortable with your simplified game plan, it's time to move on to stage 2. The second stage is experimentation. Try incorporating every tool that you're not using one by one. Figure out what's working and what isn't. Keep gradually expanding on the tools you're using. You may also realize that you've been using some tools wrong and you want to tweak how you're using them. During this stage, I highly recommend that you experiment as much as possible to fully understand the character. Don't focus on being clean, and don't worry if you're being gimmicky. You're trying to understand the character's toolkit and how everything could be used. The focus is on limits testing and understanding all of the options. You'll probably find yourself gravitating towards certain moves and not liking others. For example, I don't really like Luke's forward heavy punch, but many Luke players get a ton of use out of it. Carry on experimenting until you feel satisfied that you've played around with the character's entire toolkit. At this stage, you don't need to worry too much about your win rate. Win rate is a good metric for tracking linear improvement, but it can be a trap. You'll probably find that whenever you adjust your playstyle or add a new tool, you start losing a bit more. This is normal. You've now built a playstyle for the character and spent some time refining that playstyle to get something you're comfortable with. Now it's time for stage 3, optimization. It's now time to learn all of the nuances of the character. This is the point where I'd start watching some high level players and copying their homework. Find a few high level players of your character, take some notes on how they play. Also note down any combos they do which you aren't familiar with. Try to understand why they are playing the character that way. You don't need to steal everything they do, but if you understand the reasoning behind their decisions, it will broaden your understanding of the character. You'll likely find a few things you hadn't even considered. As I mentioned, you should also take note of the combos these players are using. Commit to replacing your combos with the optimal ones. You don't have to do this all at once, do it gradually. Also learn the Oki options after each combo. If you've always been doing the same pressure, now's the time to expand your options. You may also want to start learning matchups that you're struggling with. Although stealing all of this from top players is the easiest option, you can put in the extra effort to learn your own setups and pressure. You don't have to copy what top players do if it doesn't match your playstyle. Just be warned that top players are playing the way they do for a reason, and that you may end up playing your character suboptimally if you don't study them. This is by far the longest part of learning a character. It's a gradual process of optimizing everything you can and squeezing every last drop out of the character. You could argue that this stage never truly ends. You always have more to learn. At this point, you've gone through the early stages of building familiarity and muscle memory, you've experimented and figured out a playstyle that works for you, and finally, you've put in the hard work of optimizing everything. You should now feel confident with the character. I'll now go over some common traps which can slow down or even stop you from properly learning a character. When a new character releases, you'll see tons of flashy clips showing the extremes of what the character can do. This tech is cool and it does show the potential of the character, but most day one Twitter clips are not practical. In Street Fighter V there was a common meme that the lower rank an Akuma player was, the more demon setups they'd know. Don't be the guy who learns a million flashy setups but can't actually play the character. Focus on learning the basics first and incorporate the cool tech later. When you pick up a new character, you're going to be a lower rank than your main for quite a while. My Luke hovers around 1750 MR, but when I learn a new character, I often don't get them to High Master during the first week. It's completely normal to lose more with a new character, especially if they're in an unfamiliar archetype. Don't be dissuaded from playing this character. You may find that once you get over the initial hurdle, you enjoy the character a ton. That's not to say that you have to stick with every character you start to learn, but don't take a low win rate in the first few days as a sign that the character isn't for you. Fighting game players often pigeonhole themselves into a particular archetype. It's easy to identify as a Shoto main or a grappler main, or be scared of playing zoners. Obviously, it's fine to have preferences, but don't think that just because you're a Shoto player you can't learn a grappler. Even if you've played a grappler before but didn't enjoy them, you might like a different one. Even within a single archetype, characters can play and feel very different. I encourage you to explore new characters, especially if the game is feeling stale. One thing I mentioned earlier is that when you incorporate something new into your game, you'll often lose more when you're getting used to it. This is expected. Just because a new technique doesn't work out at first, doesn't mean it's bad. If you never incorporate anything new because the extra mental overhead and unfamiliarity makes you play worse, then you'll never improve. You'll plateau and be stuck because you're too scared to try something new. Rank is a decent metric for tracking your growth in the long term, but focusing on it in the short term is often a trap. That's all for this video. Hopefully there was something you found helpful. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and I'll see you all next time.